Welcome back. A very good morning still to each and every one of you. I trust you had a very enjoyable session earlier, and today, now, I am excited because the topic of this panel is called Dad's Confessions, Truth Revealed. Because very often as moms, right, I know when I go out with my mommy groups, we tend to talk and we tend to struggle with how come we are so different from men. You know, it's like the men are completely wired up differently from us, and we know they're trying and we are trying, and yet the clashes are, you know. So today, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. It's true, but the intention of this panel session is really let's understand from the men's point of view, because very often in life we go through life so quickly with so many prejudices and history, because last time you didn't do all this, you know. So when I talk to you, I'm not really talking to you, I'm talking to the disappointment, the anger, the hurt, the resentment, and then it comes out as something you're like, where did all that come from? So then it's not fair. So on a clean slate today, let's get a sense of what this wonderful man will just be sharing authentically from their hearts, yeah? So I want to introduce each of my panelists. We will start with CHOW Yen Lu. Yen Lu is the co-founder of Over the Rainbow, the Whole Tree Foundation, and many more, right?
Yeah, I lost count.
I lost count. Okay, so he's serial charitable organization founder. And then let's move on to RESHVEEN. He's a young father. How old your son or daughter?
7 months.
7-month-old son.
Yeah.
A young father, and you're known as the millionaire investor.
Sure.
So later we'll talk about that a bit more, yeah?
Okay, cool.
And then we also have a very familiar face, BRYAN Tan, who is the CEO of DADS for Life. And your story itself is remarkable in how from a military career, you transition into this purposeful organization. So let's discuss all that, okay? So to begin, right, Yen Lu, I want to bring up communication. Because very often, there are differences, whether it's in opinions, in preferences, in value system. So Yen Lu, what do you do when your study methods, for example, when you're parenting your son, right, is different from your wife?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that question. Can I just say we're men are from Mars, is it? I'm still trying to figure out how to live on this earth.
And I think that's so true, right? Because from what I hear, men are always like, what did I do to upset her? Right? It's like clueless. And in our minds, you should know. And you're like, please tell me.
Yeah, so anyway, I'm usually in the panel where there are more women. So I'm very, very honored to be with fellow men like Resh and Brian. We're in the majority today, I mean, at least on this panel, right? Right. Our study, is it? Oh my God, that's long ago. Well, yeah, so you know, the story goes like this, right? I mean, I used to, you know, work with my son or tutor him actually, you know, when he has questions. I usually don't, right? I mean, of course, as Asian parents, we always, you know, or, you know, worry about his studies and the academic, right? So I would, you know, usually when he came to, in a question for me, because I'm usually the main person working with him on school stuff, instead of giving him the answer, I would ask him a question back to make him think. Because I don't like to give answers. I don't want to, you know, give a fish. I want to teach the person.
And your wife is different.
She's very different. She's very different. She's like, just give him the answer. Why are you asking all these questions? He needs the answer now. He's an exam, you know, coming up. So that was the conflict that we had.
And how do you manage that? I mean, in the end, was it her way, your way, or was there a compromise way?
I think, I mean, okay, looking back, I mean, I wasn't very emotional, intelligent back then, you know, so we had those, you know, not so pleasant, especially, you know, with our son. But I think, but looking back, I mean, I look at long term. I look at what is the best thing for him in the long term. Yeah, because I think learning, I heard you guys talk about learning is a lifelong journey. It involves not just here, but the heart, the whole mind, the whole person by learning. So I take that kind of view, you know, into education and to learning. So I have a very, sometimes I just, sorry.
No, I get, but like, so I'm with you, right? Learning is like, and I have changed the way I teach my kids, right? Where instead of giving them the answer so they get the right answer, it's training the brain to think. So yours is you're more focused on the process. But what do you do when you are focused on your process and your wife is focused on the result? How do you, manage that difference?
I ignore her.
And then you do way your
And then I
way.
do my way.
Wonderful.
Well, you have to manage, because you have to manage that dynamic, of course, with empathy, with compassion,
No,
right?
that's right. Thank you so much for your candid answer, Yellow. And then Resh,
Yeah.
I'm sure into stepping newly into fatherhood.
Yes, yes.
There are differences.
Yeah.
How do you all agree to disagree?
How do we agree to disagree, right? So actually, I feel a little bit, so I'm a very, very new father, so all of this is kind of new to me, right? So how do we agree to disagree? Generally, I just agree with her, right? I try not to, cause any conflicts, right? So as a father, I guess a lot of what I've learned, what I do today is learn from my own father and how my father has raised me up, right? So again, my own parents are like a model. And that also reminds me that, hey, my son is looking to me as a model as well, right? So for me, mainly, I really seriously, I just try to avoid conflicts, right? So if she has an opinion and she wants to do it a certain way, then I will tend to agree lah. But like you mentioned, sometimes we are all trying to figure out what she's thinking, and if she doesn't communicate, then I'm like, hey, what are you trying to do? So again, I try to communicate as much as possible with her, right, to actually find out what she actually wants to achieve. And I'll try to support her as much as possible.
Wonderful. So we have the one ignore, the one supportive husband. No, it's just for and I think that's not to box us up, because often you may use that method for this one occasion, and then you may adopt another one, like avoid for another one, support for another one. I'm sure there are different ones, yeah. So Brian, you share about how you're teaching the kids how to cycle, and then they fall, and then your wife is like, oh, so poor thing, come. You're like, no, get on, go again. So how did you all conclude that? Because both are, I mean, we get where both come from, yeah.
I think one thing I realized is my wife and I, we want the best for our child. So in that particular case that you brought up, when we were teaching our kids how to cycle, and when the child falls, my wife naturally will say, stop, come, I'm sayang you, and then stop now, go and rest. Whereas I have this tension. I want to teach him resilience, right? So I would want him to know, okay, your legs are fine. Get onto the bike, carry on until you get it up. So for our first child, we face this conflict. Who is right? Do we protect our child today, or do I want to be protecting my child for the future? Yeah, and we realized that through a lot of communication, we realized that it's important that we have both perspective and both have to come in. So it's important, and what I learned from my wife is I need to address the hurt first. And once he knows that his hurt is, his feelings are acknowledged, he's affirmed, and when he's fine, then I push him on to get him to go the next step. And my wife, I guess, has kind of figured out that we kind of need to do this in partnership. So it's really about partnership. How do we address the current issue and prepare him for the future issues to come?
I love what you say, because you come from common ground. That's what I heard you say, where I think sometimes we tend to forget because we tend to be caught up with the method. But if we take steps back to zoom out and realize, hey, you want the best and I want the best, it's just that our ways of going there may be different. So parents, moms, remember, let's always find where are we common on that ground, so that we don't get caught up with the how and the method, but we realize, hey, we have the same agenda, which is the best for the child, the best for our relationship. And then we work from there as the starting point. So thank you so much, Brian. And now I want to move on to emotions, okay? Because just now you were saying that when you were younger, you were not so emotionally expressive, right? Which is not just for you. I mean, the reality research has shown the dominant emotion of a lot of men is anger. Because in the pyramid, most men tend to hide, because they tell you shouldn't show sadness, jealousy, your vulnerability. So anger seems to be more of a warrior kind of, I'm angry, and more acceptable. But actually it masks a lot of other things under. So hearing from you, what would you say you are emotionally expressive, and how did you increase that range?
Okay, no, I wasn't. I grew up, when I was a kid, I was very, very introverted and shy.
Interesting. Okay.
Very. If you think in your mind, think of someone that when you're young that was really, really shy and introverted. I'm 10 times more shy and introverted than that person.
And that's so different because he was laughing out loud just now, right? What changed? You know, how did you?
So I was not
Get
very,
in
yeah, and
touch.
also I grew up in a family, I also grew up in a family there's not a lot of emotion being shown, right, from the parents, so that was not something that you used to growing up. So no, I didn't, emotion is not something that I, knew a whole lot about.
And then when did your journey start? When you were courting your girlfriend? When you first
of course,
got with
right?
your
You have to be very like a Romeo. You have to be very emotional to express your, whatever, your passion for her.
Wow. Okay.
Maybe that's the first instance, but I think I really learned all about emotions when I started doing work in mental wellness, right, and into the whole area of mindfulness, emotional well-being, and all that stuff. That just came to me. I mean, it's like a water hose. So that's what I really. And not just my own emotions, but how to work with other people's emotions.
And how did your range of emotions increase?
I think slowly, though, but over time it did increase. But I always say, but inside you try to be calm. All the emotions are happening on the outside, but inside you have to keep calm and collected.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
So that's what I'm trying to. Yeah. That's at least that's what I say, lah.
What I'm hearing you say is, in your experience, because of the work that you do, you begin to allow yourself to be connected with those foreign emotions, and as you allow yourself to experience them, and then you begin to empathize, right, with the.
Absolutely, because one of our work is in the area of empathy, empathetic communication. It's about emotions, right? To be able to feel how somebody else is feeling, what they see, what's their world like. What is it like to walk in their shoes?
And it's so powerful when we learn that skill.
It's so powerful. That's the way we connect with other human beings at that level, at the emotional, at that level of feeling. Not here.
Wonderful, beautifully said. Thank you so much. No, I'm just very connected and present to what you're saying. Yeah. And Resh, I want to hear from you.
Sure.
Did you grow up in the era where, hey, boys, like Chinese, they have this saying, 男人流血不流泪, as in, even if you bleed, you don't cry. You just put on that toughness.
Absolutely.
And how has that changed, being a father?
Well, what you say is very true. I just remember, I was just spending time with my father over the weekend, and he said that to my son, right? It's like, hey, when he was crying, and it's like, no, you don't cry. So again, different generation, right? So as of now, I know that it's okay to cry, it's okay to express yourself. And again, if you don't cry, you don't express yourself, sometimes a lot of these feelings can get, bottled up. A lot of these feelings can get bottled up. So for me, I have this philosophy, which I always share with my wife as well. The philosophy is, life's too short to live it unhappy, right? So again, it's great to express the emotions and everything. We all feel angry, sad, and all these emotions all the time. But I always have this philosophy, which I practice with my wife consciously, and that is, whatever we actually are facing, hurt, worry, or anger, or whatever it is, we put that aside. At the end of the night, we kiss goodnight and have a good night, right? So I want to end each day on a good note without feeling any angst or anger or whatever it is. I think that's a very, very important thing. And yeah, it's great to express, but at the end of the day, let's just put any negative emotions aside and be positive. That's just basically how I live my life.
Totally agree with that. I mean, you have to end the day absolutely in a good state.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
And also not let it linger overnight.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the worst that can happen. So try to end the day in a good place for the family, for you.
Why? When you say that,
Because then you can sleep well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Brian, do you want to say more? Why is that so true for you?
No, it's so true because there were times when we have conflicts, right? And then I may feel justified and I kind of want to win the battle. But when I realize that when I win the battle, I may never win the war, right? So there's an ongoing war. So it's all about understanding what matters for the family, what matters for our marriage. And one thing that I struggle with even today is to release the emotions, release the hurt, and to forgive before we sleep, because otherwise it affects our sleep cycle.
Yep.
And for the person who I'm in conflict with, whether it's my wife, whether it's my kids, even my kids, I know that I have to take the first step to do something about it. Otherwise, it spoils the night, it spoils our dream. Next morning, you wake up with a lot of tension because you don't even know how to open your mouth and say the first word. So I realized that, it's easy to just wipe everything clean, sleep, and wake up and it's a brand new day. But having said that, I think I learned that from my kids because they're so forgiving. Even when I do the worst to them, they wake up the next morning and say, "Daddy," and then they'll hug, and everything is just forgotten, right?
That's kids.
Yeah, so I kind of want to have that reset button in myself too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And because it's so powerful, learning from our children, right? And allowing ourselves to be taught by them, right? To humble ourselves first. And Resh, I like what you say because I think it's this habit of completion, right? Where I always tell the kids, I don't care if you're angry with each other before you sleep. So go cool off. But before we sleep, let's reconnect. Let's say, hey, you know, I'm not happy because of this. Talk it out. Don't suppress. Because when we suppress our emotions, science shows that it gets stored in our cells, literally, and causes diseases. But when we choose to complete, you know, and then just say, I'm going to let it go, I'm going to forgive you because you matter more to me than me being right. And it's really a skill I had to learn, okay? Because I'm one of those who will, no, but it's so clear, why can't you see it my way? And then he's like, yeah, like you win. So in the beginning part of our marriage, I think my husband really gave in to me a lot. And as I mature, I began to realize it's not about whether I'm right anymore. It's about the entire relationship and what I'm modeling for my children. Yeah.
So I have one more thing. Just came up for me. Yeah. So one of my life, and this is after many years of learning and mistakes and failures and conflicts and all that. That one of my life mottos now is to live life with no regret, which means to live each day with no regret, which means within each day with no regret. Right or not?
So powerful, right? And
right. So that means that you have to end the day with no regret. What if I don't wake up tomorrow?
That's exactly the same philosophy I live my life with.
So I'm at some. That means I tell you my age now, right? So
No,
I'm at an age where I think about this stuff.
No, I agree with you, and that's why before we part, even the house, right? So we talk about night, but we can have structures like that through the day, where even before I leave the home, I may go out and never come back, not by my choice. So it's always powerful to complete. The more completion exercises or structures we have, the better. So one more is at our meal time, where after, we say grace, we kiss, right? And I hug the girl. So even if I was angry, the act or the habit of having to hug them, sort of like, okay, I'm sorry for just now. It creates the opportunity for us to then reconcile the more of these rituals we have, so to speak. So wonderful. Thank you, Yenu. Carpe diem, right?
Yes.
Seize the day.
Seize the day.
And Bryan, I want to talk to you about emotions because you share very openly that you used to be this career-driven military man who was very successful, right? Very, very successful in the eyes of people. And yet what people didn't see in the privacy of your home is your relationship with your kids and your wife was strained. How did you turn that around?
How did I turn that around?
Or how did you emotionally get present to, you know what, I want to start connecting. This matters more than all those accolades.
Okay, I guess it's natural for us to be task-oriented. I mean, we have certain roles that we have to fulfill, right? As a son, as a husband, as a man, employer, employee, father. And those roles kind of put us into this box where we just become really task-oriented, or at least that's the way I was. I was just task-oriented, get the mission done, get this done, at the expense of relationships sometimes. So the turning point came for me when I realized that I didn't have a relationship with my wife, I didn't have a relationship with my children, because I chose work, I chose tasks over them. And I think I was just fortunate that at a time when I was struggling with this inconsistent person, where I felt like I was a hero out there, but I was a zero at home. I couldn't live with that. I couldn't even face myself in the mirror. And that's when I was really thankful. I met some Dads for Life volunteers. Other dads, other men started walking alongside me to clarify my definition of manhood, masculinity, the roles that I play out at home, in the community, at the workplace. And that helped me to kind of turn around. But I think the biggest one that really helped me turn was the grace of my wife. My wife had to put up with a very insecure man, had to put up with a guy who just couldn't support her or even talk to her for more than 7 years before there was a turnaround. She held on to the faith that at some point some older guy or some better man is going to come alongside and I'm going to listen to him and all. So I guess the prayers were answered after almost 8 years of our marriage. And even today, I'm trying to prove to her that I'm trying to make it up to her, and I'm trying to make sure that, you know, the faith that she's given me, the grace that she's given me is not unfounded, and I want to reciprocate that, because without her giving that to me, I will never be able to turn around and make it right by her, by our parents, by our children.
Wow. Thank you, Bryan, for sharing that, because it's so powerful. It takes such a transformed man to even admit, hey, I was insecure then, and now I'm reformed. So something that I want to tell the audience is, yes, your husband may seem to be ignoring you or so driven now, task-oriented, like what Bryan just shared. But I think in us just holding that space for them, believing in them is the theme that I hear. And just believing in them, not writing them off, but believing in them is where would actually bring them to their greater self, right? Because very often when we condemn someone, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So likewise, right, let's see our family members or even our men for the potential that they can be, not our past hurts and our regrets and our anger and resentment, yeah? Because then look at what is being redeemed, yeah, for your family today. Yeah, wonderful. And now I want to move the topic on to fatherhood, right? Because so the role of the father in a family. So Yendu, how has your father role differed from how your father parented you?
Yeah. When I saw that question, I looked, and I thought back. I was thinking back about when I was a child, when I was a kid. Actually, I didn't know my father very well. I didn't know my father very well growing up. My mother was the powerful presence in the family. This is back in this is many years ago, right? We talk about in the 50s and 60s. So so we weren't that close at all. But now I think back a lot about our relationship, and I realize actually our parents, they actually sacrificed for us a lot back in those old days. Yeah, it's always just about the children mostly. You don't think about it back then because there was other issues that we have a bit of, because of the relationship between my parents that transferred to the kids, projected to the kids. So we have a bit of dysfunction growing up. Yeah, seriously. But so recognizing that, so I realized this is something I want to change for myself and my son.
And so you connect more with him?
I connect with him. So we have one child, right? So yeah, so I connect more with him. I spend a lot of time with my son, a lot of time. We used to just do stuff together, period. We go out and play basketball, tennis, or we play tennis as a family. So two of us play tennis a lot. Initially, as a dad, you're stronger, you're bigger. He has no chance. But later on, when you grow up, it's like, oh my God, what am I getting up against?
It becomes more of a fair fight.
Yeah, and we live in the U.S., so baseball was our son's thing. So he joined Little League. In fact, he made a Little League All-Star, right? In a little city that we live in, California. And I was one of the assistant coaches for his team. Yeah, and basketball and all that. So. Yeah, so and the other thing I'm very proud of is that I try to make dinner every day.
You try to
make dinner.
Dinner.
Be home for dinner every
cook.
single day, unless I'm traveling.
Wow.
If I'm not traveling, I will always be home for dinner.
Because that's your passion, is it?
It's my passion to spend time with family. Yeah, and with my family and with my son. So that's why the bonding is so close. We're like kindred spirit.
I think what I'm really hearing and what you share is it's so real, right? Our parents or our great-grandparents live in a generation where they were working and living, and that's why they didn't have the luxury to spend that time with us. And for you, you chose to do something different so that you have that bonding with your son. So I think that's amazing. Yeah, and you just being so intentional to cook dinner unless you're traveling. Wow, wonderful.
To be dinner, not cook dinner. I don't think
no,
anyone wants to He might.
Okay.
I'll be home for dinner. I'll be home for
you'll be
dinner.
home, okay.
But I do help out in the kitchen.
Yes, okay, got it. Okay, to
Just
have
not to
dinner at
cook.
home. Okay, got it.
Thank
Fine.
God.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you, Yano. And for you, Resh, sometimes the authority figure, how we were brought up in, is the father is the head.
Absolutely.
Which means even if he's wrong, he is the head.
Yeah.
How is it like as a father, have you thought about who's going to be the authority in your own nuclear family?
Yeah, actually, we've spoken about that a lot, right? As in, I've being a new dad, as in, it's just pretty straightforward, lah, right? It's no school or whatever it is. But I've spoken about that with my wife, regards to, hey, who's going to be the one who is the the strict one, who's going to be the one who sayang and does that and stuff like that. I guess it'll come naturally, right? I guess it come naturally. Like my wife is very, again, as a woman, she's very nurturing, very very nurturing to my son, and she's the best mother that I can think of, right? Like, she's amazing. For myself, I plan on being so my dad had this philosophy last time, right, which I really liked a lot. And that was, he was the authority figure. He would be the one who's strict, so we were scared of him. But then again, after he beat us or whatever, after he slapped me and stuff like that, and for doing something wrong, he would come and he would apologize and say sorry, and and say, what you did wrong, kind of thing. And I think I really love that approach of how my dad brought me up, personally. And I think that is something that I can replicate as well. Maybe not to beat him or whatever, but to be the authority figure, but at the same time to know that dad still loves me for I made a mistake and my father still loves me. So I guess that's how I want to be as a father, right? To be the authority, but at the same time not to be somebody my son is afraid of, but somebody who my son can come to after and still talk with and still have fun with.
Wonderful. I love how there's that balance, right? Where this is the boundary, and I'm very clear about it. And yet you also show your soft side, your vulnerable side when you go one-on-one after that, to ensure that it's not just all raw and no love.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Resh.
Yep.
And Bryan. Okay, so you talk about dads for life, and specifically you talk about how dad has a unique offering in playing the role in children's life. Can you share that with our audience?
I think we dads know that we have a very special place in the hearts of our children. We also have a kind of a very special place in the home. There are things that we dads can do slightly better than what moms can do. I mean, I'm not saying that moms can't. Most moms can do. In fact, moms do everything for the kids. What we are hoping to do at Dads for Life is encourage dads to also come in and spend more time with the kids, not just on the weekends or the holidays, but to be present every day. Because our children needs both dads and moms in their life, right? It's almost like the analogy of the plant, the sunlight and water, right? Every plant needs sunlight and water. You can't have too much of one and the absence of the other. You kind of need to have both. So that's where there's that complementary role that we play with our wives or the mothers of our children, because our child needs both. So just like the case about the cycling, right? I protect them for the future. My wife protects them, cares for them for the present, and then at home when we have when we think about toys, right? The first, if my kid wants a toy horse, for example, my wife would be like, okay, let's look at where can we get it from the store, right? So when it comes to daddy, what does daddy do? Daddy becomes the horse at home, lah. So these are the kind of things, right? And then when it comes to protectiveness, or at least when it comes to modeling, you talk about modeling. How are our kids going to learn to become good sons and daughters, good men and women, good husbands and wives, good fathers and mothers, grandfathers and grandmothers even? That's through our modeling, because we are living for them the blueprints, and it takes two hands, it takes a partnership for this to happen. So everything that I do with my wife has to go towards making sure that we pass down the blueprints of what a thriving marriage should be, what thriving families should be, and even how do we live authentic lives. I mean, COVID has presented us a lot of challenges, right? Work and home suddenly come crashing down together. Our kids see the best of me and the worst of me. They get to see daddy at work, they get to see daddy at home, they get to see daddy talking to his parents, they get to see daddy talking to mommy, and they get to see daddy talking to me, right? So which Bryan is present at home? Is it one of the five, or are all the five the same? So I am forced to be more intentional with the way I live my life. I'm more intentional in the way I treat others. And when I fail, and when I hurt somebody at home, that's when I know that I need to take a step to show my children what reconciliation is. What does it mean to try to restore the relationship? What does it mean to make right what is wrong? And what does it mean to not just seek forgiveness, but also to give forgiveness and to give grace? But that's the only way they can learn grace, right? They do something wrong, I come down hard on them, but I don't punish them. And they know that punishment is coming, but yet it wasn't meted out. That's grace. And that, hopefully, that's how they can catch such values. Because values, I don't think it can be taught. I think it is only caught. And that's what I feel that I have to do in tandem with my wife. I can't do it without her, because otherwise, it's just one side of the story.
Wow, very powerful, because what I'm hearing is really this united parenting, where it's not just you, but as you share, right, our children, right, they quietly watch and observe, right, like in exactly the different phases of Daddy, Bryan, right? And then the consistency is what they're looking for. And it's not just you alone, but together with your wife. So what I'm hearing from you is really the marriage is critical. Because if the marriage doesn't work, it then cascades down, and then and that's the culture that is being set, right? So wonderful, thank you so much. And Yanu, now I want to move on to debunking myths, right? So in like what Bryan was sharing, the reality is very often between husband and wife, right?
More confessions.
Yeah, good for the soul.
You got it.
Good for the soul.
Okay, very often, right, in relationships, right, one of the things that women hate the most is our lies, right? And for lies, you know, and for a lot of men, I mean, generally, I know I shouldn't generalize, but most men, if I can omit a fact, if I can gloss and not mention this, I will do that. But for women, omission of a fact is a lie. And then it becomes a huge thing for them, and then all the small question marks come up, because if you lie about this, I can't trust you about many other things. And it becomes an emotional entanglement. So I want to hear from you, with you and your wife. You know, was there a period where you conveniently left out some facts, and then she found out about it, and what did you do to reconcile, if you ever?
I have to go back. I have to think about that. We'll have to go back sometime. Yeah, but certainly, I mean, also men just aren't that. I mean, sometimes maybe intentionally and not intentionally, we just don't communicate so much. Period. It's not about you trying to hide something, but sometimes that can put you into trouble, get you into trouble, isn't it? Yeah. So I think, but I think more and more, I just realize that. Communication is key. Being able to trust one another is absolutely the key. And as you go older, that's the thing. And it's a partnership, right? So I think, but if you realize you did something wrong, then you have to. No, it's like come straight. You gotta come straight. Yeah, with that.
I so love you when you candidly just said, whoops, I didn't mean it, and it came so naturally out of you. It's just that I didn't even think of saying that, and then oops, it's wrong, right? Like just using the right and wrong gives me an insight to, it's not like you planned on it to happen. You didn't. And then suddenly, ta-da, you're faced with an angry wife who is accusing you of things that you are like, but how, correct?
Yes, and the thing that I realize I do more and more now, can I talk about this a bit more, is humor. I found, try to bring humor into every situation, including the difficult ones, also the good ones. Be able to laugh at yourself and laugh at her, at the same time. Just bring humor into the relationship. I found that is so powerful, and it just brings you together. Humor does wonderful things. So I would recommend definitely more humor between partners, in the family. Have a laugh, have a good laugh at yourself, have everybody, yeah.
And I think that's a forgotten skill, They actually have this thing about laughter is the best therapy, right? The best medicine. And really, try it, viewers. There was once I was so down, I was just down, right? And what I decided to cheer myself up, right? I'm responsible for my own happiness. So I started laughing. No reason, no purpose, just ha 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 ha. And then so I just did that, right? And then haha, cannot, right? He, and then after, ho, ho, ho. And by the time I finished that whole song, right, it was so ridiculous because I was alone that I actually felt happy. And you know, the endorphins that are released when we actually cheer ourselves up, we then become a space to then spread those happy hormones, right?
Yeah,
To the
absolutely,
people
yeah.
around us.
When you smile, who's the person that you make happy?
Other people,
You,
the person looking
you,
at me.
right? When
I
you
thought the
smile,
person
and when
looking
I
at
smile,
me.
I feel happy, right? I'm the first one that feel happy. But going back to that, so before, you know, it's just like, again, going back to what I was saying, you know, for example, my wife is upset or she doesn't, you know, she's not talking
Ignoring
to me,
you.
right? Yeah, whatever. I don't know why. That's the problem. You know, before I used to ignore her. I would just not even want to talk to her because I don't want to get into argument. But now I try to use humor.
And how do you use it?
Oh, you know, I don't know. It's like I try to.
Come naturally.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, I don't try to think of it. So anyway, so I try to use humor whenever I can in those kind, especially in those kind of situations.
And I think given that a majority of our audience are moms, I think moms, we can also adopt that practice, right? It's not just you were resourceful enough to, okay, let's use humor to break the ice, to the stonewalling, but we can also do that, right? In us just choosing to, okay, I may not want to say sorry because there's still that pride there, but I can use humor to just just admit or just reconnect and reconcile.
Yeah, and you just said sorry, right? So sorry is the hardest word, but it's the most powerful word.
Yes.
For guys, sorry is very hard, you know. but when you say it, it's very powerful.
It is, and when done authentically, it connects, it heals so many hurts, right? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Yendu.
I was going to add that a wise man told me before we got married, the author, that and he said that specifically to me. So, you know, when you're a piece of advice, right, for your marriage, when you're wrong, apologize immediately. When you're right, keep quiet. And I found that to be very true in many instances.
Wonderful. To be very candid, I thought when you're right, also say sorry. No, because
No, but there's a truth to that. There's a truth to that, right? Doesn't mean you did something wrong. Just means that you're sorry for causing her to be upset.
Yes.
Not that means that you did something wrong.
That's right.
And that's where empathy comes in. You know, oh, she's upset because I didn't do anything bad, or not a bad intention, but she's upset anyway. So I'm sorry for her being upset.
And when you have the expanded
And
view,
that's Brian meant. Yeah.
yes, and when you have the expanded view of taking responsibility for your relationship, you know what happens? Your wife also will, hey, actually it's not you. Because it just takes one person to just to diffuse the whole situation, and then they will come to their senses. It's not about me dominating. No. In fact, when somebody chooses to say, you know what, I'm sorry. For what? I really don't know. I mean, one of the things my husband, he came up to me one day, hey, I'm sorry. I'm like, for what? You know, in my mind, still so righteous, you know, now you know you do wrong. I really don't know. But I'm just sorry that you're feeling this way. And immediately, right, the admission, I was like, hey, you don't have to do that. But I was so appreciative that he would humble himself. He didn't even know what he did wrong.
Poor guy.
All that, right? But he
Always
just
have to say
wanted to
sorry.
reconnect. He said, so I'm just sorry that you're feeling the way you're doing, and for whatever I did, I'm sorry, right? And then I'm like, how do you stay mad at someone who's, you know, so who's trying so hard to make the relationship work? And then we also pull up, wonderful. So wise words, And then, Resh, I want to talk about something, right? You know, in today's city life, sometimes fathers are already so exhausted, right? One whole day work, and then yet we talk about connecting with my child. How do I find time? What advice can you give moms and just helping, not blaming fathers, number one? You see, you work, never spend time children, you know? And they may not say it, but the accusing eyes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What can we do to better support you?
Okay, I think when you just mentioned that, it happens quite a bit with me as well, right? Because, you know, my mom, my wife is a stay-at-home mom, right? So, you know, she's taking care of my son the whole day. My son being a young boy, right? And then, you know, I have to go to work and do my stuff, and I come back home at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., whatever not. So, you know, sometimes even though she doesn't like say it bluntly, there will be the accusing eyes, like, hey, you know, I've been spending the whole day and he's been doing this and that, and you know, you're not present and stuff. So I guess for me, the most important thing is that, you know, when I am around, as in when I'm at home after work and stuff, it's very, very important for me to really be present, right? To put aside distractions, mobile phone or whatever it is, and just like be there. right? So that's something that I am still trying to do my best to, right? So to really be there, and of course weekends where I really dedicate time and just be there for him, right? Where I also take over some tasks that my wife usually does. So she also feels that, hey, I'm participating and really helping raise him up, right? So again, being intentional, really being present, intentionally being present, and to have dedicated times, weekends or at nights or whatever, where I really am with him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love what you shared about setting aside that time.
Yep.
Because, and when you communicate now, at least the mom then knows, okay, it may not happen today,
Yep.
but it's going to happen. And then they get off your back, and then there's no more tension
Yeah.
between the two of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Resh.
No worries.
And Bryan, so I want to ask you, right? You know, in today's day, right, things have changed. Where last time it used to be only the father working, the sole breadwinner, but today women are earning, and many of my peers are earning more than their husbands. What is something that a woman, because while a man, okay, let me rephrase, because some women wonder, even if we don't ask, how secure our husbands are. Because you know the generational myth that husbands should be providing is there for everyone. So sometimes my friends even feel bad that they're earning more. So is there any thing that you want to share, you know, to our viewers?
Wow. Well, first confession, my wife does earn more than me. So my wife is the main provider. And how does that make me feel? I do feel insecure initially when I made the transition into the non-profit sector. And it was hard. I mean, as much as I want to be enlightened about changing stereotypes and all, but the truth of the matter is, whether it's in Singapore, whether it's in the rest of the world, you know, most of us men, we are still kind of defined by our name card. We're still kind of defined by how well we provide for our family. And I think that's the crux that really hits us, because we want to protect our family, we want to provide for our family. When we are unable to do that, it hits us, and that's something that we have to reconcile within ourselves. Within the group of the community of men, yes, there's empathy. There's increased empathy globally. More people are more open to seeing men taking a step back from high-flying careers to care for the family, to care for the child, parents, or even a wife, or even for themselves if they are incapacitated. But yet, we can't just throw off those stereotypes, those expectations of the past generations. How will my father look at me if my wife is providing for me? How will my friends look at me? And everything, or even how will my children feel when they go to school and they tell people that my mom is this, but my dad is always at home and he doesn't have a job. Yeah, so these are things that hit all of us. It's a cause of concern. We can't just shrug it off. But yet, the saving grace of all this is the decision that we make as a couple. So this is not an easy decision to make, and most men who have to make such decisions always do it in agreement, in congruence with our wives. And once I have my wife's affirmation, acknowledgement of what I'm doing, I think that helps me to stay the course and to kind of manage all the other challenges that I have, the other concerns and everything else that I face, whether from good, well-meaning friends, whether from society, whether from my own parents. So it's really that decision, that mutual understanding with our spouse or the mother of our children that helps us get past all these challenges. We cannot just shrug it away. We will have to face it anyway. But the thing is, I think with most men, once we make a decision, we will just bite our teeth, grit our teeth, and just push on and stay the course until there's a need to change, or until there's a new decision that's been made with our spouse, and then we do that. So for me, it's really being focused on the audience of one. Who is the audience? And for me, that's my family, that's my wife. And as long as my audience of one provides the affirmation, that support, and all, I think that helps me stay the course and manage all the other challenges and concerns and anxieties and insecurities that I have.
Thank you so much for being so candid. And this is where I want to tell the audience, right? Let's remove our expectations, even from moms, because I think sometimes the moms are like, hey, but you are supposed to. And then together with that is a whole long list of expectations, which destroys any relationship, right? If I come to you with a long list of expectations, there's no way you're going to measure up on every level. And in my mind, I'm in love with this list, not with reality. So there's a huge disconnect. So I love what you say about there's so many stay-at-home dads, and for me, right, it's about celebrating the stay-at-home dads, because what it would take for a father to say, you know what, I think I'm good in anchoring the home, I want to cook, I want to teach my kids, and going against the grain, I think it takes so much confidence, bravery, and risk to actually not follow the mainstream. So what I would ask our audience to do is to begin to, as a society or as individuals, begin to just throw off the old mindset that the man always has to provide and always has to provide more. But I think it's really about partnership. We are in this era where it is about partnership. It's not just me always saying sorry or you always providing more, but it's us tapping on each of our strengths to then bring up a new generation that is relevant in today's time. So thank you so much. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Brian. And Yellow, so as we bring this to a close, right, I want to ask you, in today's VUCA world, right? I mean, academic in Singapore, we can't run away from that. That is such a pressure cooker. And I want to ask you, what's your take on the relevance of how hard we push our kids in, especially the VUCA world?
I'm very passionate about education, as you know. Very passionate. I'm very passionate about young people and next generation. In fact, tomorrow we have a fireside chat on this, educating the next generation. Right? Is it for our future, for their future, for ours? We have to ask that question. Are we educating them is it for our benefit, or is it for their benefit? We have to think about that. I think.
How would you say that? How would a different kind of education?
Yeah.
So
I think. Research has shown that parents will have high expectation for their kids. Actually, the kids will do well in life. So it's okay to have that expectation. But it's how we help cultivate them. How do we provide an environment for them to be able to, right, to pursue, their spark. We call them the inner spark that each child has. So it's about helping them to find that inner spark, help them develop it, help them to pursue it, develop the passion, the talent. And really, it's also about educating. I listened in on your previous panel. It's about educating the heart as well, not just the brain, not just the left brain. Singapore is a very left brain education system. I always STEM.
Yes.
Right? It's about, but you know what's happening in the VUCA world in the next gen. The left brain's gonna be taken over by AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that's repeatable, whether it's blue collar, white collar, it's going to be taken over by AI. It already has. So it's going to be fully human, especially going forward. It's about the right brain, which is imagination, intuition, all that's creativity, as well as the heart, which is what it means to be human, empathy, compassion, teamwork. So that has to come from that. So I think it needs to be a more holistic education. We're very much focused on the left brain education. By the way, that's the education system for the first industrial revolution. One size fits all.
Yeah.
We're already in the fourth industrial revolution. I talk about this all the time. Yes. We're 3 generations behind in our education system.
Yes.
Education ministers listening to this, right? We need to change our education system so that's more. Well, we're so behind in how we teach kids. We're so behind. We have to change for their sake.
And so I speak passionately about this as well. And when I say, while we already have systems, so a Singapore system, while not perfect, is a very good system that we have in the family, which is what you alluded to. We create our own system. Like, how do we? So maintaining that standard that we have for our kids, while also how do I then cheer them on, right? Because it's very different when I scold you, hey, again wrong, again so slow, and it comes down harsh. And when I'm cheering you on, okay, yay, you scored 1 mark better, let's keep going. That approach, right, really shifts the stepping stones towards the same goal.
Absolutely. I think parents play such an important role.
Yes.
Education. But education is not to be left to the teachers and educators.
And
I think Brian would totally, right? I mean,
we're the cheerleaders at home.
We're the cheerleaders. We're the cheerleaders. We're the mentors. Right? We're the ones who are going to help light that fire, inner fire.
Yep.
Yeah, and being role models, right? And so how important provide the environment where they can, and not, again, we have a fear-based education system. We need to go to a love-based education system. You know what I mean? Not a fear, but I'm going to fail this, fail that. Fear of not being number one. That's Singapore, right?
Yes.
To be, what do I love to do?
Yes.
What do I care for? What do I care about? And
what are my gifts? What was
what
I
am I,
born
and what
for?
can I
What
give
are my
that I can
contributions?
develop, right?
Yeah.
To make that whatever is broken whole again. That is what this education should be about. Again, I'm gonna quote something. You all heard this before from 2,500 years ago. You're right. Children are not vessels to be filled. They're fires to be lit.
Nice.
Yeah,
I think
wonderful.
it's one of the great Greek philosophers. And
Yes.
how true is that? It's more true than ever before. It's always been true, except we forgot about it. It's going to be more true than ever.
And I want to assert, we can be the spark within the home, right? Within each home, we may not be able to deal with our education system. And to me, I don't believe in blaming or pointing, but we can create the environment within our home that ignites the fire, the flames within them. So wonderful. And thank you so much, Yanu. And Resh, I want to ask you about in-laws, because sometimes one of the conflicts, right, is in-laws, where I don't think it's an easy position for the men, especially when you're caught in between your parents and your wife. Any, short answer or solution as to how you deal with that tension?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question asked for me personally, because so it's an interracial marriage, right? Interracial, interreligious marriage as well, right? So my parents and my wife's parents are very different in terms of language, in terms of religion, in terms of like pretty much everything, right? So there has been sometimes a conflict. There has sometimes been an issue as well, right? In terms of difference in beliefs, and my mom doesn't like it that my son is not being brought up in a Christian environment in their house, for example, and there's always these tensions and everything, right? So, and also sometimes my wife doesn't really like going to my parents' place, and there's always this tension, so over weekends when I have to go over and stuff like that, I'm always a little bit tensed up because I'm like, later my wife goes and then she's upset and whatever not. So that's an ongoing challenge that I'm actually currently facing. I'm learning to deal with it. It'd be great if you all give me some advice or something.
Guys, any advice, or how can we as women support you? What is something that you would
so
love?
in the end of the day, like well, again, like I try to accommodate as much as possible to my wife, right? So if she doesn't want to stay for too long, then I say, okay, cool, right? Then okay, we can go for a while, and then we can come back home and stuff like that. So that's what I try to do, right? And as much as possible, that in the end of the day, I always tell my wife, like, this is our son, it's not my parents or your parents' son, right? Like, and how we raise our son is up to us. It's not for our parents to tell us what to do. So, that's something that we agree upon. And I think that's very, very important, because, he's my son, right? So, we come to the consensus that, hey, it's our responsibility to bring him up in the way that we believe he should be raised. So that's what we practice wherever we are.
Any advice from you all? If not, I think I love what you shared about remember that it's our son.
Yeah.
It's ours, not your parents,
Yeah.
not my parents,
Yeah.
but it's ours. So whatever they say, it's up to us to decide how we're going to co-parent
Absolutely.
the child together.
Yeah, just add a bit to that.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think what just came up for me is that if marriage is a partnership, I think we all agree it is. Then I think the partnership needs to find a common purpose.
Yes.
So my wife now has a common purpose, which is our foundation. The common purpose could be raising your child to be the best that he or she can be.
Absolutely.
That's one, could be one common purpose in the early days of your partnership.
Yeah.
But later on, that will grow as well. So it's about finding the common purpose.
Okay.
I think it's so important to align the marriage even more. Yeah. So that'll be a bit of my kind of my personal, also my learning.
Wonderful. Find a common purpose.
Which I found.
I was going to jump on the bandwagon by there's something that we can do also. So what we found useful was we go back to our own parents and remind them of their role. They are first and foremost our parents. So they parent us so that we can be the best parents that we can be for their grandchildren. Yeah. So that you don't kind of skip one generation and do that, right?
And then go direct, right? Be the father the second time.
So every time that happens, we go back up and I need help.
Yes.
Right? I need help with my child.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is something, yeah. And then they
Yes.
start to realize that, yes, this is my child coming to me for help, so I parent. And after a while, we
Yes.
get that the roles are clarified.
Yes, they always are parents.
They will always be our
They'll
parents.
always be our parents. You know, my parents are no longer around, right? But I've always had gratitude for them. I've always had gratitude.
Okay, so in closing, right, I want to just ask one question, right? You know, very often moms seem to be always busy. And then we resent the fathers who seem to be chilling, watching the phone, and then there's that resentment. So why is it that dads have no dad's guilt? You know, moms have mom's guilt. We do so much and still feeling guilty at the back of our head. Dad's got no dad's guilt. So, you know, and then there's this concept of your cave. So in conclusion, if each of you can share, what's one thing that you want to share with our audience in, just what's one thing you want to share with our audience and what you want, how can women support you better? How can moms support you better? So, Yanlu, if you can start.
Sure, maybe I start. Okay, so one thing, that men have feelings too.
Okay, so ladies, remember, men have
We're
feelings
not robots. We're not robots.
too. Even if you don't show them.
Yeah, even
you
don't
do
show them,
have
we're not
feelings.
robots. Just remember, we have feelings too.
Thank you.
And we're just as vulnerable inside as anybody else.
Thank you, Yanlu.
So we do need all the support that women can provide.
Yeah.
And Rush?
Yeah, so again, for me, how I would love to be supported better is communication, right? More active communication, not to hold anything back, and to like sometimes it's always a struggle where I don't know why the hell my wife is angry, right? I think a lot of people are like that as well. And hey man, just like let's speak more about it so I can actually understand and don't assume that I should know lah. I think that's the most important thing.
Very good. So wife, let's stop assuming and having that shoot list, right? Let's just be very direct. Communicate directly
Absolutely.
with clear instructions. Bryan?
Well, for me, my only request, if my wife is listening in, my thank you for all the grace that you've given me. I'm really in gratitude because without your patience, your grace, I wouldn't be able to be who I am today, to be the dad for life that could be. And I think one thing that is really useful that I found was, every time, I mean, conflicts abound, we have disagreements, it's hard for us to understand one another, but one thing that helps me a lot in my journey is my wife will always bring me back to the point of remembering our first love. And then I will suddenly get sparked to remember how hard I had to fight to get her approval, how hard I had to fight to fend off all the other alpha males so that she would choose me. I remind myself that my wife chose me. It wasn't the other way around, right? She put off everything else. So because I was chosen, I need to make sure that she didn't make the wrong choice, or she don't regret her choice, right? And then, just get us back to that point of that first love, how hard we fought to come together to have that marriage, how hard we had to seek approval from her parents, her friends, and everybody else, and just to get to that point, because the moment we remember how hard we fought, we're not going to give it up, we're not going to let it go, we're not going to just take it lightly anymore. So get us back to that point of first love. Thank
Wow, so wonderful. So you've heard men have feelings. Really just be very direct in connection and remind them of their first love, right? Which is us. Thank you and bye.